I'm Miss V with the Wichita Falls Art Council, and today we're going to be doing a half-and-half painting using Vincent Van Gogh's Starry Night. The supplies you'll need are 1 print of Starry Night, 1 sheet of watercolor paper, watercolors and water, a permanent marker, pencil, glue, scissors, and any other coloring tools that you would like to use. Now this is one example that I have that would be a finished product. So what you're going to be doing is taking your full piece of the Vincent Van Gogh Starry Night. You're going to fold it in half and you're going to cut this piece in half. And you're going to choose which side you want to keep on your canvas and which side you're going to be using as your reference. So in this example, I went ahead and used the right side as my reference. But for this, I'd like to try and use the left side as a reference. So I'm going to go ahead, this here. Now you can go ahead and glue whichever side you're keeping as your non-reference onto your paper. I like to keep it off of my paper at the moment, just so that I can move it a little bit, just in case if I need to maybe like paint underneath a little, just so that it blends together a bit easier. And so that I'm not worried about this printer paper getting too affected by the water. After that, you're going to start sketching, but before, I usually like to recommend taking your water, getting a little bit of it, and whichever colors you're going to be using, I like to put a little bit of water on it to basically start softening it a little bit and to be able to get the colors out better once I have to start painting. So you can either use a spray bottle. If you have any other things aside from a paintbrush, feel free to go ahead and use that. But for me right now, I just have my paintbrush. So it's just getting a little dab of water, putting it on all of the paints that I'm using. And right beforehand, I have a paper towel on the side that I'm dipping my paintbrush on, just in case, so that it's not getting the colors anywhere else in here. Okay, so once I do that, I'm gonna let the water soak in a little bit on the watercolors. And for now, I'm going to be looking at my left side and I'm gonna start sketching that out. And you can go ahead and start using your markers as well, if you want to just immediately use that. I may just end up doing that in the end. So. Okay, now that I have my main amount of line work done, I'm gonna go ahead and start coloring. Now what I like to do and what I normally recommend for watercolors is to start off with the lightest color. So the lightest colors that I see on this left side of the painting would be either some whites or some very, very pale yellows and very pale blues. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off with very pale yellows and blues, and then I'm gonna go from there for darker colors. Now I usually like to do that because one, it's a little bit difficult to get out colors sometimes from your paintbrush, especially when you start off with, for example, a really dark blue instead of like a very light blue. But also, it gives me more time and a less likely chance that colors will also be muddled together. Like if I'm going back in the pan from a really dark blue to a really light yellow, the yellow will end up being a little muddy if I'm not careful. And by the way, if any of the paints that you put the water on dry up before you can use them, just add a little bit more water to it, mix it in, and it should be good to go. Now what I'm gonna do with this yellow, and for all of the paints that I'm doing, I'm going to end up doing some smaller strokes for paint with these. So they're all gonna be just clumped together smaller strokes. Now another thing I recommend for this is to start by focusing on one area, and from there, as long as you have one space that's separate from the first place that you're painting, that gives you some time for the other spots to dry, and it's less likely that the colors will blend in together. So for example, I was starting off with the sky, and now I'm gonna go over the mountain areas with more of the lighter blue. Starting out with some of the lighter blues. So that way, I still have a space to work on. I'm also going to do that for some of the swirls in the sky that I didn't touch up with paint. But I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And this gives time for the parts where I painted with yellow to dry a little bit before I keep going with any darker colors. Now for a lot of this, it's going to just be a back and forth process and more of a trust the process kind of thing. There was definitely times for some of the other examples that I made where I wasn't exactly sure on how it initially was coming out. But once you get to the finished product, it ends up looking a lot more put together. So for the most part, I'm pretty much done with this. What I usually like to do afterwards is I like to make sure that some places are dry, and then I like to add some extra line work to it. So whichever places I feel like could some extra scaling around, I add a couple other shapes. Okay. And that about does it for this piece. Now, if you haven't glued it already onto your canvas, as soon as this part is dry, feel free to go ahead and glue whichever side you decided to keep on there onto your canvas. And now, you have your own half of your interpretation for Starry Night. Well, that's about it for this lesson. Thank you. Bye-bye.